Well, thanks a lot for inviting me to speak here. It's a very nice opportunity, I think. I work at the Institute of Environmental Sciences, which is the latest addition to this faculty. And I think, well, an opportunity like this is an opportunity also to get to know each other, because there's still some lacking in that. So my presentation is called The Resource Nexus, the Dynamic Nature of Society's Metabolism. Before I start with it, I'll just introduce a little bit the field of research that I work in, which is industrial ecology. In the whole debate we had earlier this afternoon on, should we go for fundamental or applied research? And the statement was made, well, we have to apologize to do fundamental research. From our point of view, this is really different. We have to apologize for doing applied research, because that's not really real research. But our questions, the questions that are the starting point of our research, pretty much come from society. It has to do with, well, the environmental issues that are around us, climate change, the other environmental problems, but also the use of our resources, issues like scarcity or criticality. All those issues are the starting point for our research. And that doesn't mean that well, it's not real research, and it doesn't also not mean that it's not curiosity driven. It can be pretty much, and it is also increasingly. Environmental sciences is a young field, industrial ecology even younger, so the starting point was, well, we have these problems here, we have to do something about it, so we have to sort of look into it and see what they amount to, what are they, how can we solve them. So that's the starting point. But if you get on in this field, then you see you have to develop methodologies, you have to develop tools to investigate, well, what actually happens in the environment and what happens in society that causes these environmental problems. And then we use pretty much similar methods as in the other, so to say, scientific disciplines, like physics, like chemistry, like biology. And one of the main realizations behind industrial ecology is that the laws of nature also apply in society. Hence the title, Society's Metabolism. You can describe the metabolism of society in a very similar way, like you can describe the metabolism of organisms. Society takes in resources, materials, oxygen, energy, whatever, and it emits materials at the end of the process of building up our infrastructure, producing our products. CO2, waste, and yeah, this metabolism of society is the object of our field of industrial ecology. The resource nexus is just one aspect of that, and I'll now go into the topic of this presentation. It's research that we do at CML. It's not just me, it's also my colleague René Klein, who is also here in this room, who is doing research in this area. One of the things that you see happening in our environmental science field is that, well, there are separate resources. You have energy, you have materials, there's water, there's land. All those resources are being investigated, but pretty much in isolation. There's a whole lot of specialists looking into energy, seeing how the society uses energy, how it's produced, how it's used, what happens as a result of it. There are scenarios for the future, all those things just for the energy field. The same for materials. Material scientists look into materials like metals. You have the water science bunch of people, biomass, all those are separate fields, and the resource nexus is sort of, well, if you step back from those individual resources, you see that they are all interlinked. The resource nexus acknowledges the interdependency of all those resources. And this nexus, so to say, the lens through which you can look at all those resources together, is very complex due to all kinds of feedback loops that are in there. So if we want to produce energy, we will need water. And it's not just if we make hydropower, it's also if we make power from fossil fuels, and especially, of course, if we use biofuels. Lots and lots of water is needed. On the other hand, if we produce water, we need energy. We have to pump water out of the ground, we have to purify it, we have to get it to people's homes, also again by pumps. So that means that there's a lot of energy that we need in the production of water. So it's feedback loops. And it's all partly fixed because, as I said, of the laws of nature, because the chemical, biological, etc. properties of those resources that make that they demand certain other resources to produce. But partly they're elastic and they're dynamic, and that has to do with at what scale are they produced, at what efficiency are they produced, what technologies do we really use to produce all those things. And that is not fixed, those kinds of things can change. So this nexus has a fixed part, and it also has a dynamic part. I'm going to go a little bit more into the energy metals nexus as an example of that. Energy for metals and metals for energy. So it takes energy to produce metals, it takes metals to produce energy. It takes energy to produce metals. Well, here you see the energy requirements of a number of metals. The orange part is related to the mining, and then the gray part is related to the refining. You see that, steel is the most, or the least energy intensive material. It uses about 20 megajoules per kilogram of produced steel. The most energy intensive is aluminium, it's over 200. So per material that differs a lot. Well, this is at the micro level, just how much energy is needed to produce 1 kilogram. But if you scale that up and you have a look at the global level, you will see that it's a lot of energy that we use to produce this stuff. 30 to 35 exajoule per year energy is used. And that amounts to about 7% of total global energy use. So that includes everything, not just what industry uses, but also what we use in our households. 7% of the total is just to produce metals. And that's not something that's going to decrease. The estimates for the future show really big amounts. And that's because, the demand for metals is growing very fast, and there is no sign that it will slow down anytime soon. So by 2050, the estimate is that we use 134 exajoule, which is 30% of the present total global energy use, and 15% of the estimated energy use from the energy scenario. So that means that the amount of energy that we use to produce metals goes up in an absolute sense, but also in a relative sense. One thing we do know, this type of analysis is not included in the energy scenarios. So it's possible that the demand for energy that's estimated by the energy people is not high enough, that it does not take into account these mechanisms. And it's very important, of course, that it should. Now, if you try to analyze this particular nexus, what do you see? Well, then you have to ask yourself, what drives energy for metals? And that's, of course, in the first place, the demand for metals. That, if that goes up, then the energy for metals also goes up. And that has to do with things like how many people are there on the earth, how rich are we, what are technology development, what are prices, the stock dynamics of the metal. All those things together determine what will be the demand for metals. Second thing that you have to take into account is the energy efficiency of the metals producing industry. And that again has to do with, well, several factors that you can identify. And then the last complicated factor is the ore grade degradation. That means, well, when we run out of our nice rich ores, we will be left with the poorer quality ores, where there's less metal per kilogram of ore. And if you have less metal per kilogram of ore, of course you have to crush and take out of the ground more ore to get at the same amount of metals, which increases the energy use. Well, all those things have their own driving forces, so indeed it's a very complex system. And if you want to investigate that, you have to take that apart piece by piece. Now, some of these aspects we do have information about, others we don't. But here are two examples of things we do have information about. On the left-hand side here, wait a minute, sorry, where was I? Here. The left-hand side, yeah, here. Here you see the development of the amount of electricity in kilowatt hour per ton is used to produce aluminium. Starting point is 1980, end point is about now. We have Europe and we have the world. And what you can see from this is that hasn't changed a lot. The efficiency has improved just a little bit, but not a lot. And that's not because, well, the industry has done nothing in the meantime to clean up their act. It's just because, again, of the laws of nature. It takes a lot of energy to separate the aluminium from the oxide. What goes into the smelting is aluminium oxide, alumina. And yeah, if you have to pry that apart, you just have to overcome the chemical bonds. And that takes energy. So this hasn't improved a lot and probably will not improve a lot. So it's a given for our future. The other picture is of the relation between the energy use and ore grades. Here on this axis we have the embodied energy, so the amount of energy throughout the whole production process chain that is needed to produce a kilogram of copper in this case. And here we have the ore grade. So if the ore grade here is an ore grade of 3, if that goes down towards 1, it's now about 0.5, the average ore grade. You see that the amount of energy that you need goes up. And yeah, this information can be used, therefore, if you do forecast projections of future aspects of this resource nexus. So lots of things are relevant here, and we are just starting to collect the relevant data on this. The other way around, the energy metals nexus, that says, well, metals for energy. In order to produce energy, we need metals. We have to build up the whole infrastructure. You know, of course, copper is the main metal that we use for electricity, but also, well, you have to build your drilling machines to get your oil out of the ground and the power plants. That also takes a lot of metal. And if we move towards a more renewable energy system, that's the thing that is now sort of generally accepted that we should do that because of the climate change problem, then we see that we will need more of those metals. In a sense, it's logical, it's easy to produce fossil fuels, you just drill a hole and out it comes. But if you have to build solar cells or windmills, or you use bioenergy, then you have to have a whole infrastructure that you have to build from scratch, and that uses a lot of metals. In this picture you can see a number of scenarios where René Klein, this is from his thesis, this picture, has calculated how much of several metals we need in order to provide the world with energy. Here you have the current mix, the blue one in the front, the one just behind, the purple one is the same mix, but now equipped with carbon capture and storage, so we can leave everything as it is, but we use the technology that captures the CO2, so it doesn't come into the atmosphere. Then you have to build additional installations, so it's a bit higher, but not too high. If you have a completely non-fossil energy scenario, then the amount of materials that we would need is much larger. And the last one is the International Energy Agency Blue Map scenario. It's the most environmentally friendly one of the IEA scenarios. Still, there are some fossil fuels in it, so that means that scores a little better than a total non-fossil one. It's not, the message is not that we shouldn't do it. The message is that if you do it, this will be the consequence, and we have to know that and to look into it. Well, here again you can look what is behind it, what are the factors that drives this nexus, how is it dynamic. Here again, some information we have, other information we don't have. How am I doing in time?
5 more minutes.
5 more minutes, okay. So here you see this picture also by René Klein. What are the metal requirements of a number of renewable energy technologies? And here too, you don't have to look at that in a lot of detail. You can see that on this side we have the fossil technologies, and on this side we have the more renewable technologies. In general, the demand for metals is higher for the more renewable technologies. This is another piece of the puzzle. Those are the scenarios for energy for the future, not just the amount, but also in which way they are produced. There's lots of them around. This is one, again, from the International Energy Association, saying that, well, in 2050, we will still have a lot of fossil fuels. Then we will have some biomass, some nuclear, and on top we have the really, well, the real renewables, so to say. This type of information is also relevant if you want to know how will this nexus develop in the future. So, yeah, this is a new field. Also, this whole thinking of in the nexus, in the relations between all those different resources. So what's happening now is that some indicators are being developed to measure that. The energy footprint of metal production and also the metal footprint of energy production you can sort of see as relevant indicators. A footprint, you may have heard of the ecological footprint. That is something that indicates the environmental pressure, the total environmental pressure of, well, for example, a product or a society or a lifestyle. You can do that too on the level of these materials or resources. Elasticity of linkage is also a topic that you could think about developing indicators in. Material return on investment, we have already the energy return on investment, you may have heard of that. How much energy does it take to produce 1 unit of energy? If that approach is 1, then the technology is sort of, well, never mind. And for materials, you can do the same. You can calculate how much copper does it take to produce 1 kilogram of copper. And if that approach is 1, then also seek something else to do. Those types of questions are in the field, and they're relevant if we have to think about, well, how will that affect the metabolism of our society, and what does it mean if we want to move our society in a more sustainable direction. So you can sort of develop a research agenda from that. This is my last slide. The identification of such linkages, well, it's now definitely on the agenda, so that has happened. The quantification, well, that's the next part. First steps are being made, but there's a lot to do still here. And then understanding the dynamics is the next part. That's very difficult, and that's, well, here the research is still in the early stages. It's truly interdisciplinary. So we need economics, we need technology, we also need natural sciences to work together in a research program like this. And then the next step is, well, how can we use this understanding in formulating resource strategies and policies that will develop our society in a direction that we would like to. Well, that's it. Thank you very much for your